I'm torn, Sal. I want to make sure I'm still working here tomorrow. But I got so much to say.
Let's go.
Let's state the obvious first and foremost. Let's state the unfortunate obvious. There's currently one black head coach in the National Football League. There are 32 teams in the National Football League. You all do the math. Brian Flores, a black head coach, got fired after a 9-win season and a 10-win season. The Dolphins hadn't seen 19 wins over a 2-year period since 2002-2003. The last 3 coaches that were one and done were David Culley, Steve Wilkes, Urban Meyer. Now, only one of those 3 coaches actually embarrassed themselves on the job. The other 2 were just working hard on the job, and their resume did not have enough time to look how they would like it to look. So I'm just stating facts, y'all. These are not opinions. I'm just stating facts. One black head coach out of 32. The league is 78% black. I'm just stating facts, y'all. Don't kill me. I'm just a messenger. Now, if we're talking further, the man was set up to fail. That's the biggest issue. Let's remove race from the conversation. The man was set up to fail. The cupboard was empty. DeAndre Hopkins wasn't there. J.J. Watt wasn't there. And Deshaun Watson wasn't there. Tyrod Taylor was a starting quarterback. Week 2, Tyrod Taylor got hurt. Tyrod Taylor did not return again until week 9. He returns week 9. He plays 4 games. He gets hurt in week 13. He does not play again the rest of the season. So David Culley, starting quarterback Deshaun Watson, was not present. His backup quarter, Tyrod Taylor, played 6 out of a plausible 17 games. So he had to play the majority of the season with a third-round rookie in Davis Mills. Even the first-round number 1 overall pick rookie sucked this year in Trevor Lawrence. The first-round top 5 pick in Zach Wilson didn't play well. So you can't expect the third-round Davis Mills, who's a third pick on the depth chart, not only a third-rounder, but third on the depth chart for the Texans, to play well. David Culley was set up to fail, and fail he did. You looked for him to fail, and y'all gave him every reason to fail, and then you fired him. What was the point in hiring him if you were going to fire him after a 4-13 season? I'm torn, Sel, because I really don't want to bring race into this. I don't
About 4 minutes late, but let's go.
But as an analyst, I almost feel like it's our job to analyze every aspect of things, both present and also forecasting. And I think the unfortunate truth forecasting is this. When people start to bring up the lack of minority coaches in the National Football League, and there's clearly a lack of minority coaches in the National Football League, because you don't need a rule, the Rooney Rule, if their hiring practices were all normalized and standardized. So people are now going to look at David Culley and say, well, he was 4-13. Y'all remember what Dan Campbell was with the Lions this year? Y'all remember that? So I don't know. I'm disappointed for David Culley. I'm disappointed for the racial turmoil that's now going to exist in debates, at a minimum on social media, if it doesn't exist in real life. It's you talk, man. I'm frustrated.
Let my facts bleed into my opinion, and I'm going to start with the facts that David Culley went out there and won 4 games this year, and you just listed a litany of issues and absences and lack of resources and personnel. And when they had Deshaun Watson, when they had J.J. Watt the year prior, they won 4 games as well. Some hell of a coaching if you're David Culley. You're without your franchise quarterback, and you win the same amount of games. I understand you have 1 more, but the point is well received. Here's the thing. Let's talk about it. All right. Deshaun Watson, oh, my God. The collateral damage that comes from Deshaun Watson's issues legally, the issues that it has to do athletically in terms of him being a participant on the Houston Texans, the issues that it now has in terms of employment for David Culley that has now been severed. Let's talk about how Deshaun Watson unintentionally caused this moment. Deshaun Watson supposedly wanted some say in the hiring process. Deshaun Watson, in that say, wanted a black head coach. You got a black head coach, and all of a sudden now that black head coach is fired. Now, I'm not putting this all on Deshaun Watson. I'm just letting people know how this collateral damage occurs. The craziest thing about it is David Culley never stood a chance because David Culley was nothing but cover. Now, here's the problem. when you say you want something, now we're going to have an honest conversation. If race is the element we're going to use, then that's going to be the honest conversation.
It just clicked.
Okay. In this world where we're all trying to do the identity politics and everyone wants everyone to be equal, which sounds great, but in reality will never be a reality. I'm not here to dispel that for you. I'm here to tell you what comes from when someone's like, okay, I'll do something that's disingenuous, that's something that I really don't truly desire, but it's for cover, or more importantly, it's for you. Now, Deshaun Watson, you wanted something, and then you didn't want to show service to what you wanted. Well, then what does David Culley stand in terms of opportunity and chance? Not only do you not have a franchise quarterback, you don't even have the very reason why we hired you in the first place. If all things were smooth, all things were equal in Houston, you think they were hiring David Culley. This has nothing to do with his race, except when Deshaun says he wants someone of that race, then they go get him. When they don't have Deshaun, they let him go. That's the collateral damage. My first reaction was, Deshaun, when you make a decision, you got to see how the dominoes fall. You're too big to not understand how they fall. Now they're falling.
You just enlightened me, so thank you for that. Because what I realized, which I hope y'all realize too, is this: the Texans never wanted David Culley in the first place. The Texans hired David Culley because they wanted Deshaun Watson, or they hired David Culley because he was black, or both.
Yeah, that part.
I just realized it. Because for you to fire him based upon winning 4 games as a rookie head coach without J.J. Watt, without DeAndre Hopkins, without Deshaun Watson, without Tyrod Taylor for the majority of the season, for you to fire him when he didn't deserve to be fired, that means you hired him when he didn't deserve to be hired. Think about that for a second.
Say it again, baby.
Think about it. If you fired him when he didn't deserve to be fired, then you hired him when he didn't deserve to be hired. So you never should have hired him in the first place. You only hired him to appease Deshaun Watson, or you only hired him because he was black. Either way, that was dumb. Because now you just wasted a year of the franchise's life.
Yeah.
You just wasted a year of the franchise's organization, because David Culley definitely didn't deserve to be fired at this junction in time. So then why are you firing him? How you going to fire a coach who had to deal with the third-string quarterback, and he still won 4 games on the season? Dan Campbell ain't get fired, and Dan Campbell dealing with a #1 overall pick quarterback making $30+ million from just 4 or 5 years ago in Jared Goff.
Yeah.
He ain't get fired.
Yeah.
We got our coach for the Atlanta Falcons, Arthur Smith, if I'm not mistaken. He dealing with an NFL MVP in Matt Ryan. And they ain't winning that many games. You got Sean Payton. He only won, 7, 8 games this year? Yeah. And he had the same bed that David Culley had to lay in.
Yeah.
But you could argue an easier division. So when I look at it, he never deserved to be fired. So if you fire a man who didn't deserve to be fired, then you must have hired a man who didn't deserve to be hired. Either way, we got to look into that. Because if we also being real, I'm trying to figure out if I want to say this.
Say it.
If we also being real, you can't just hire him because he's black.
Come on.
You can't do that. You can't just hire him because you can't do that, because now you just undermine the entirety of the organization.
Well,
now you fired him again, and now all these players got to deal with a new head coach, who the new head coach is going to bring in, the new culture, the new building blocks of the foundation of the organization. Come on, man.
But what you're talking about, what we're discovering, is something that is right before everyone's very eyes. But a lot of people don't want to call attention to it because of the criticism, the backlash, the scrutiny that comes from it. These are the political pressures being applied. This is affirmative action. This is exactly what the core tenements of that is, which is, okay, we're going to try and get the numbers up, even if we don't really believe in it. So we're not going to really be affirmed in our decision, but we're going to be affirmative in our actions. What does that mean? So you look at this situation. There are no solutions. They're just trade-offs. Deshaun Watson, we want you so bad that we'll do what you want us to do, even if that's not what we want to do. But we're not really partners right now. See, that's the crazy part about it. Deshaun is trying to create a partnership, and they're like, we're not really partners, but we'll give to you. But Deshaun Watson at that time was the cover. When Deshaun Watson is now dealing with his own issues and not a part of this team, there is no cover for David Culley. So now we can just do what we desired to do, which was what they did today. Let me tell you how this goes. There have been 12 coaches that have been one and done since 2006. 12. Most people would think that that's going to skew heavily towards the black coaches, but not really. 4 of the 12. 8 white, 4 black. They'll fire a white dude 1 year, just like they'll fire a black dude. The problem is there's not the same quantity of black coaches to even deal with.
Dive into that, Sal.
Okay, I'm gonna dive all the way in.
Because I don't want the listener to be like, well, they fired 8 white coaches and only 4 black coaches.
Yeah.
Remember, there are a lot more white coaches to fire than there are black coaches to fire.
Yeah.
So percentage of black coaches being fired after 1 year is much greater than percentage of white coaches being fired after 1 year.
Yes, please go. Let's go all the way to the deep end, though.
Don't let me drown, though.
Hey,
don't let me drown.
You better don't drown. There's also the difference in quantity of coaches that desire to be coaches that are white versus black. We talked about this before. Let's talk about it again. There's no hard numbers on it, but let's just say that there are more players, whether high school, former athletes, college, whatever pro, that wanted to be coaches that are white than are black former players that wanted to be coaches. The line is longer for the white coaches than it is for the black coaches. Therefore, there are also more white coaches than there are black coaches. Now, what's happening? If you look around, there's also this same dynamic when they talk about commentators as they're watching 2 black former players host. I was posed with the same conversation as maybe David Culley was. What you gonna do when it's over? What I wanted to do was talk it. What he wanted to do was coach it. But you got to understand, when we talk a quantity conversation, as I brought up the numbers, 4 of 12 one and dones, the quantity conversation goes back in terms of how many do they even get to pull from in terms of number of coaches. This is crazy because Deshaun Watson starts by saying, I want something. And then the ultimate thing that they wanted, he never gave them, which was his service. So then David Culley, you're just dangling in the wind, brother. Sorry, man. It's just a casualty of the affirmative action.
Well, here's the thing, right? Only part I disagree with you on is this. Don't just hire someone because they are something if they are not qualified for the reason you're hiring them for, right? If you are hiring someone because they're something and they are qualified, that's different. But if you're hiring someone just because they're something and they're not qualified, that's where it's like, ooh, time out. Let me get a 30-second one.
But David Culley's qualified.
One. He is. I wouldn't have hired him. Like, you know, what was he? The Ravens passing game coordinator and the Ravens wide. Somebody talk to me because we did this on the fly. So I'm literally just going off my natural knowledge of what David Culley was. He wasn't even the Ravens OC, obviously, because that was Greg Roman. So, like, his qualifications in my mind were not the same qualifications of like a Brian Flores, you know, and not even the same grooming of a Brian Flores. David Culley, to me, was maybe as qualified as like a Nick Sirianni, who to me also wasn't qualified. I'm still waiting to get David Culley's resume. So as I look at it, I just don't know that you can. I don't think the hiring was a wise hiring because you hired him because Deshaun Watson said he wanted someone. That's what we heard. Deshaun Watson tell me personally. Facts. But the reports were that Deshaun Watson wanted a coach that was black, but now you finna fire him when you didn't even give him a chance to succeed. It's like, come on, man.
Well, listen to this, and you got to make the designation and the difference. Qualified gets you into the door, but what gets you the title, what gets you the true opportunity is desire from the person in power. So think about this. It's not a conversation of is David Culley qualified because coaches, not every coach that's a head coach has been an offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator or even special teams coordinators. Sometimes you can just leap the line, you know? However, at the same time, it's what the desires are of that same franchise. This one was so entangled in listening to the public outcry, Deshaun Watson's desires, that it never served the Houston Texans in terms of what they wanted. And David Culley, I'm sure, knew it. That's why he only had 2 years of guaranteed money on his contract as a coach, when they usually get 5 years. So David Culley even is like, look, because of the lack of opportunities, I got to take this opportunity, even though it's not long for me.
I'm starting to get heated. Not
why? At reality?
Yes, exactly.
Welcome.
But here's why. Stop doing things for optics.
Can't do that. Political
Like
pressures.
the David Culley hiring was clearly just for optics because the David Culley firing is not merited.
But why? Okay, let me stop you down.
Please stop me.
Why
down.
are you acting like this is an epiphany now? Or why is this sounding profound to you now when you just said that he didn't seem qualified to be hired in the first place?
Here's why.
Come on, bro.
Because I'm not even just thinking about sports.
Okay.
I'm also thinking about different shows, right? Some of our favorite shows over the last year, promoting black faces of these shows, promoting black men, black women, because it's like, okay, after this happened, we got to atone. We got to atone. And then we just go back to reverting back to our natural path. Or we go back to undermining what we were actually trying to do in the first place. Like, Texans, y'all didn't even give the man a chance. Big dog. Like, y'all didn't even give the man a chance, and now you're going to fire him. And worse than anything, because forget me, forget you, you hurt your organization.
Yeah.
You hurt all 53 on that roster. 68 when you count the practice squad and whatnot based upon how the NFL is fluctuating. Like, and y'all did all that for what? Come on.
Well, they did it all because the temperature is different now than it was when they made the decision. At that time, it was a muscular move. It was to serve several purposes. One is to get all of the conversation that the Houston Texans and the organization had racial issues that were racially insensitive.
Remember what the Texans' late owner, Bob McNair, said? What was it? We can't have the players inmates running a prison.
Yeah.
So you're right. You're right. Just to give y'all context of what the Texans have been dealing with.
Yeah. So at that time, this makes more sense than right now. At that time, they also were dealing with that. They're dealing with just the societal pressures that everyone was saying that Black Lives Matter and slogans on the helmets, etc. Like that was what the flavor was. They also were dealing with, hey, Deshaun Watson, basically anything to please you as long as we can get your services that pleases us. And then they did it at that moment. But that temperature is not the temperature it is right now. Not in the social pressures, not obviously when it comes with Deshaun Watson, because he didn't even play for him. They paid the man in a non-guaranteed sport $10 million to not play at all. So guess what? Whether you want to say it's pettiness, whether you want to say, oh, their true desires finally came out, hey, man, everywhere you go, there you are. And this is the truthful moment.
Let me ask you this.
Yes, sir.
Did you think David Culley was qualified to be hired? I'm trying to look it up as we're talking right now, but Arthur Smith was he got hired last year. He had previous coordinating experience. Our coach, Robert Saleh, hired for the Jets. Yeah. He was a coordinator previously. I'm just doing this off the top of my head. Urban Meyer, hired for the Jags. He was a head coach previously. Y'all get in my ear with the other coaches that were hired this year, first-year head coaches. Brandon Staley, hired for the Chargers. Yep, he was a coordinator previously for the Rams. Then you look at David Culley, hired for the Texans. Of the five that I've mentioned, he was the one who was coming off of being a passing game coordinator and a wide receivers coach. That's why when they hired him from the jump, I was like, Sel, if Brandon Staley was a coordinator, if Robert Saleh was a coordinator, if Urban Meyer was a former head coach, if Arthur Smith was a coordinator, then there's David Culley, and all he was a wide receivers coach and a passing game coordinator. Nick Sirianni, obviously, he was the OC for the Colts. One of these is not like the other, which is why I said he, based upon the relative sample size of every other coach that was hired, is either a former head coach or former coordinator. David Culley, based upon the relative sample size, did not deserve to be hired in the first place based upon everyone else's credentials.
Well, yeah, I can give you some of that, but let me just tell you, it's not just race-based. Before we go to break, they used to have this term called Scally Buddy. Scally Buddy was basically, I'm going to offer Acho a scholarship. Now, Marcellus is his buddy, and Marcellus ain't as good as Acho, but we want Acho so damn bad, guess what? We're going to offer you a Scally as well. Scally buddies, right? That happens all the time. Deshaun Watson, David Culley was his Scally buddy. They didn't want David Culley. They wanted Deshaun Watson. And Deshaun Watson made them think, okay, well, if you appease me, maybe, but definitely no. And then his services and his actions showed hell no. So then guess what happens to the Scally buddy in every situation? And I know a couple guys like that. When the one that they really want ain't there, oh, everybody else, y'all got to go.